Hello Blender fans! Welcome to this video tutorial. My name's Bud, and today we're going to be making this. I found this model on blendswap.com, which we'll be getting to in a minute, and what I've been doing is setting up shape key drivers for the shape keys that came with this model. Now some of you may recognize this as Sintel from the Blender Foundation movie of the same name, which was done back in Blender 2.5, and now we're up to Blender 2.78. And so a lot of these the shape keys that were done over here, and there's a lot of them, and you can see that many of them, these ones in purple here, have drivers associated with them. Well, when we open up the original file in a couple of minutes, you'll see that I'll show you that the drivers, a lot of them no longer work in Blender 2.78. So what I've been doing is rebuilding them, and as I've been doing that, I've been making these shape key drivers over here that is just in a format that I personally am more comfortable with. Now, just to show you what they do and how they work before we get to the nuts and bolts of it, what we'll do is I'll go into, I'll select the armature, and we're already in pose mode. So here's a good one, the top one. Sneer. I've got this set up so if you rotate this bone, it drives this neat little snare that Sintel does. And there's still more that I have to do, but here's another one that's sad, and you rotate this bone and the eyebrows move in kind of a sad way. And what I've done is I've also added these left and right ones here, so you can offset it a little bit like that. Select all of them, Alt-R to clear the rotations, and we'll do one more. This is a fairly involved one here. Call this Mad Lips, because if you rotate this bone, it activates this shape key. That kind of gives a mad mouth expression there. And there were 4 shape keys that make this up: upper right, upper left, lower right, lower left. So, as with the sad one, you could rotate this some and then add a little extra here to make it look more natural, because the human face typically doesn't really move in a symmetrical way like that, which is why I set it up like this. Now, I'm going to select all the bones again, Alt-R to clear the rotations. So, to start from the beginning, I found this Sintel model here on blendswap.com. And what this is Blender is open. So this model is readily available and has been for a long time. But the Sintel movie that was done in Blender 2.5 was additionally done with the Blender internal render engine. And so what this BlendSwap user here did, Captain Kirk here, is he updated it for cycles. And he did a really good job updating the materials to work in the cycles render engine, which you'll see in a moment when we do the render. For whatever reason, a lot of the shape key drivers are still not working. Maybe they were and the latest version of Blender somehow annihilated them, which sometimes happens with Blender because it's not always forward compatible or backward compatible. So what you want to do, download it, which I've already done, to a folder, in my case, tutorial, and then you want to extract the archive. And this is what you get. And when you go in to Sintel Light Cycles version 2.1 and open it up, this is exactly how it comes in. And so what you want to do is press Z to switch out of the wireframe mode, and you'll see what a really nice model this is. But when we go to rendered view, you'll see most of the materials are not linked. So if this ever happens to you and you want to do a quick fix, if it's just one, you could right-click on her skin for this example, and go into the node editor and find the image textures. So this image texture here, if I hover over it, it's looking for a Sintel skin diff. It's looking for the diffuse material, the diffuse texture for the skin material. And if you open up the list of materials, list of images, you'll see that it's been here before, but there's no longer an icon next to it because it's not linked. So you could click on this file folder here and find Sintel skin diff.png. Double click it and you'll see her skin came in. And of course you'd have to do the same for the bump map or normal map, for the specularity map, to fix all this. And you could go through one by one and replace all these. But we're not going to do any of that because there's a reason why this happened. And so if we go back to the model, you'll see all these PNGs and JPEGs came in outside the textures subfolder. So what you want to do is select all the PNGs and JPEGs, slide them into that folder, and then when you double click this, Z to get out of wireframe, go into the rendered view, and you'll see all the materials, all the textures are now linked. And it's a very nice model. But today we're only going to be working on the face. And there's a couple of things we can do to make life easier and make this run faster. One thing is I can switch back to solid view. Things are a little slow for me because I'm also running the screen capture software. So we can right click on her hair, go into particle settings here, and just hit this eyeball. So the CPU and the GPU aren't working on that. We'll see if we go into the scene tab here. Yeah, there's a simplify option and it wasn't checked. So checking it, if you have some other number here, like 6, I think is sometimes mine defaults to. The only one you have to worry about is the viewport, and I just put mine to 0. So that helps speed things up. And then to work on her face, select any part of the armature, come down here, go into pose mode, hit A to deselect this brow, which is pre-selected for some reason, hit A again to select all of the armature, all the driver components, and Alt-G to clear any transforms, and Alt-R to clear any rotations. And I happen to know that the tongue is driven with scaling as well, so Alt-S just in case that happens to be scaled inside there. Now if you come down here to the layers, on layer 12 has the render set up. Of course, you can go through all these layers and see what's what and what's where, but layer 12 has the render set up. I find it's easier to see the drivers if I turn it off. You see all these nice blue drivers. Now if you right-click on Sintel, come back over here to the object data, you'll see how all these shape keys came in. And you'll see almost every one of them does have a driver associated with it. Anything that's purple has a driver associated with it. And I'll save you the trouble of going through them one by one and tell you that most of them don't work anymore. There's a couple that do. The brow, for example, G to grab, you can go up, and you'll see you can also select both of them, shift select to select both at the same time, G to grab, and if you push it all the way up here into surprise mode, the mesh deforms as expected, which is nice, but I could keep pushing these drivers right off the screen. It's really not supposed to work that way. So that's also one of the things we can fix. If we grab the corner of the mouth here, press G, it can't grab it, rotate it, scale it, anything. So that one's completely disconnected, and that's one of the things that we're going to fix today. All right. So how do you go about it? We'll just start with the mouth. Right-click on Sintel and make sure you're in the Object Data tab here. And let's find, mouth smile.l. Now, we've already seen that the driver doesn't work. And I've already have gone through to see if there's a quick fix to fix that one, and there's not. So the best thing really is to just delete it. And we're going to work on this one too, so I'm going to delete that. And now if you go down with mouth smile.l selected to this value slider here and slide it back and forth, you can see that the shape key works great. And you could go in, if you don't want to burden yourself with making drivers for all of these because maybe you just want to do something really quick and you don't plan on reusing the model, you could just go in and delete all these drivers, except for the few that work, and certainly control it this way. But I've already decided that I'm going to use this model as a basis for designing another character. So I want to set all the drivers up. And anyway, this is a good way to learn how to do this. So, how to add a driver. I'm also going to clear this one down to 0. Go back to mouthsmile.l, and to work with drivers, to set them up, you want to go into the graph editor, then come down here where it defaults to F-curve and change it over to drivers. And so we deleted the driver. So to add a driver, you can click over here, right click, and just select Add Driver. Then here, manually create later. And now it's later. And the convenient thing about deleting it and re-adding it is it comes to the bottom of the list. Otherwise, you'd have to scroll through all these and find the driver. So, click on it with the mouse pointer in the drivers panel. Hit N to bring up the properties window. And it defaults to F-curve again. So the second tab down is drivers, and that's the one we want. So, we want to keep it simple. I want to keep it simple. So I'm just going to drive this shape key using the averaged value of the position of this driver that we're going to set up. It will automatically create a variable for you, and should automatically put you in the transform channel. If it doesn't, just make sure you're in there. And then it wants to know what the controlling object is. So you can click on the eyedropper here, come up here, hover till it says rig, and then it wants to know which bone of the rig. It doesn't give us an eyedropper this time, so if you look over here, because we clicked on this earlier, it says the bone name is mouth.l. Right click on Sintel. Fastest way to do it is just start typing it, mouth, and you'll see it comes up right here. Click on it. And you'll see red was still getting an error, and the error is showing here. And to fix that, click Update Dependencies, and those will go away. And it wants to know what type of motion is going to control this. So I like Y location, and we have to do it in local space. Now, if you come up here and select the bone again, it comes in with all these transform locks on. So we need to unlock the Y location, and because the smile kind of doesn't move like this, it moves like this at an angle. So we also want to unlock the Z. And now, if we hit G to grab it and try to move it that way, it moves that way, but the vertices aren't deforming yet. So right click on Sintel, and I'll show you why that's happening. Really what we need to do is to multiply these values so that a short little motion here will have an effect here. And you might have to do some experimenting depending on your setup. But here's what I found to work. I add modifier generator, and I change this value to multiply it by 100. Now, if you click on this driver and move it that way, you'll see the mesh deforms. And this is exactly what we want. Now, like I said earlier with the eyebrow, where you can move it and it deforms nicely, but then you can keep moving it, you can leave it like that if you want, but really I like to kind of lock this down. And the way to do that is with the bone constraint. So with this driver selected, come over here to the bone constraints and add bone constraint, and we want to limit location. We want to limit location in local space. So if you hit G and you move this, you see that it pretty much stops moving right about here. And these values, y 0.009, that's basically 0.01, and this is 0.03 on the Z. I'm not even sure it needs to be that high. So it looks like 0.02 really on the Z will work. So you can clamp down the X axis, the Y, and give it 0.01 as a limit, and then clamp down the Z, and we said 0.02. And so now if you come over here and grab this, that's really about as far as you can move it. It does some wonky thing here because we're going on two different axes, but that keeps this bone in this general area so you won't lose it. Now, if I clear that with Alt-G and grab it again, pay attention to the values up here. I slide it up till the mesh is fully deformed, and then if I keep moving my mouse in this direction, those numbers keep moving, and if I were to left click here and stop, then when I hit G again, say I want to move this back a little bit, it doesn't move because it thinks the numbers let me get out of there. It thinks the numbers are still this high. So I'm going to hit Alt-G and clear that transform. The way to fix that is right here. You also want these limiting values to limit the transform values up here. So now when we hit G to grab, the bone's limited to this space, and if I keep sliding my mouse cursor up this way, these numbers, let me do it again, and go way up and then left click, you'll see here that these numbers didn't go past their constraining values, and that's exactly what we want. So now you can see where you can go through, find all these that aren't working, and link them back up doing the same process. And that's what I've done in this file. So don't worry, we're still going to do some more as an example, but hit A to select all of these bones so you can see what I've done. I showed you some of these before. And another neat thing, why I like to do it this way, is I've parented all these bones to this empty here. Well, actually what I've done is this empty has parented to it a bunch of little arrow empties, and then each of these bones is parented to one of these arrow empties, so I can select this empty, hit G, and if I'm done working, I can get it out of my way. Or if I want to work on the mouth, I can grab it and move it down. So like, okay, so the mad lips is here in the area of the mouth where I'm going to be working. And so select all, clear transforms and rotations. This is why I've set it up this way. And what these are is phonemes. So like this one will give the mouth. And well, to pretty things up a little bit, I could select this one, then hit Control I to invert the selection, press H to hide everything else. Move my little setup here. And I can move this one out of the way. So you'll see this is the versatility of why I like to set it up this way. And then we have mouth.u, and what this does is it just gives the little ooh shape there. So we have the ooh shape, but really for it to be an ooh, we have to open up the jaw a little too. And probably don't need so much, you, she's saying you. So you see how these can work together. And so what is something you can do once all this is set up? Well, you can animate with it. Facial animation, which is very complex, which is why I take the time to do this. And I'll play a little animation I made. You'll see how all these bones move.
Oh, hey, you got my note?
So, how do you go about making one of these shape key drivers from scratch? That is, one that doesn't already have a driver, a bone, to control the shape key. One of the things that attracted me to this model was its ability to dilate its pupils from its present dilation to wider or narrower, which you can see that it has the shape key. If you select the eye, right click, and if you have trouble selecting past this armature, you can hit Control and select again, and that'll go one layer deeper. And you'll see there are only two shape keys associated with the eyes. One is dilate wide and the other is dilate narrow. However, when it came in, as you'll see on this model that we brought in, there's no bone anywhere that controls it. That doesn't control it. And this doesn't control it. Those control the eyelid. So, back to the eye here. If you were to delete one of these, then you'd be able to control it. It's a little hard to see. I don't know if you can see the pupils dilating there, but just like all the others, you could just delete these and use it that way. However, if you plan on doing a lot of animation, then you probably want to do what I did and set up a bone for it. The way to do that is pretend we're starting from scratch again. And we're going to delete these and start fresh. Let's see, the first one we'll do dilate wide, add driver, manually create, and here we are. Click on the drivers tab here, just like before. Keep it simple by using an averaged value. And to make these drivers here that you rotate, I select Y rotation, again in local space. Now before we were able to click this, in fact we can still do that. Select the rig and I can unhide the bones, click on Sintel, and go back to the eyeball here and the driver we're setting up, and click on the eyedropper and select the rig. That's all well and good, but now we have no bone to put in this value here. Let's add the empty that we're going to parent all these bones to later. So Shift A, add, and then select empty. The main empty that I use is plain axes empty. And it's going to come in down here where the cursor was. So you can G to grab, bring it up here where we're going to use it, and scale it way down. To get back to that quickly, you can hit the period on the number pad. So let's get it in where we want to use it. Select Shift S, brings up the snap menu, and we want cursor to selected, and then you can decide how many Blender units apart you want each bone to be. I was using like 2, 3, 2.5. So Shift A, add another empty, and for these I added a single arrow. And you'll see it's pointing up, so scale it way down. And RY90 points it this way, and then you can just press G and the up arrow, move it wherever you want. So the or you could do G, Z. The eyes are up here, so let's just put this empty here, and then Shift S, cursor to selected, brings our cursor up here. Now we're going to add a custom bone shape. But first, we're going to need a bone. Now, when we were working on the mouth over here, we already had one, but in this case, we don't. So what you do is, in this model, if you select one of the bones, make sure you're the armature tab over here, and all these layers, all these rig layers are here. And I've already checked it out, so I know that this layer here has the rig. And so we're just looking for this head bone here. And what I want to show you is, if you come over here to the display options, I have these turned off, these relationship lines, because they make me nuts. But I'm going to turn them on for a second. And you see from the very top of the head bone, we have all these other bones parented to it. And so really, you could just take any one. I picked this cheekbone here. And I'm going to hide the relationship lines again. Tab into edit mode. Then you have to select it in edit mode. Shift D to duplicate and bring it out here where we have our 3D cursor and our empty. Hit Control I to invert the selection, and then H to hide all those other bones. And what we want to do now is give this bone, which will be controlling the pupils when we're done, but we want to give it a custom bone shape. So hit Shift A and then add text. S to scale it way down. And so things aren't so confusing. Bring it back over here, and I'm going to hit 1 to get it aligned here. Scale it to about the size you want it, and you can select Shift S, selection to cursor, and it's going to put it right here. Now, so we can see the text, R to rotate, X to constrain the rotation along the X-axis, type 90 degrees, hit Enter, then go into tab into edit mode, and then I think I had said dilate W for the widening of the eyes. Tab out of edit mode, S to scale it down some more, and somewhere about there, this bone moved, so Shift S, selection to cursor, and now it's right on the cursor, and this is pretty much at the cursor. You'll see in a minute it doesn't quite matter yet. Now we're going to give the bone this custom shape. However, there's a problem. So let me deselect everything and then just select this text. If you try to apply this as a model for the custom bone shape, it won't work. So what you have to do is press Alt-C, and this little menu comes up. Select the lower one, Mesh from Curve, Meta, Surf, Text, etc. So now this is no longer text. Select this bone, and let's name it dilate.w. Enter. So it takes, then go on to this bone tab here, and come down here to this custom shape. There's a little eyedropper. You can hit the eyedropper, hover over this, which I've already renamed to Dilate W. And when you click that, you'll see how the bone takes on the shape. You'll also see where it's a little, actually, this almost always happens where it's not lined up with the custom shape, and usually it's worse than this. So whatever happens, the way to fix it is to come back down here to the custom shape, and while you're on the custom shape, if you tab into edit mode, then any changes you make to it will affect the bone. You can move it, you can rotate it, scale it. So I already rotated it up when I recorded this segment earlier. If yours is still horizontal, then just rotate it till you get it where you want it. Then you can tab out, and when you're done with the custom shape, just hide it because its job is done. So now, as you saw in the rig I'd set up, if you hit R to rotate, you're supposed to be able to rotate this bone. Well, we can't right now because the rotation here is locked. So just unlock that, and now you can rotate it. So right click on Sintel. Actually, we're working on the eye. So right click on her eye and come back down to this shape key driver into the drivers tab here, and averaged value, variables already created. Hit the eyedropper and come up and select the bone. It will select the rig, and if this isn't already filled in, just start typing it, whatever you named it. Did we name it? Good question. So let's go over to the bone. Yeah, we got to dilate.w, hit enter so it takes, and right click on Sintel and start typing it. It'll populate, click on it, and we want Y rotation and local space. And in this modifier down here, I think I selected -10. Again, you might have to play with that. So now when you come up here, hit R to rotate, you can see that the pupils dilate, and if you can't, let me zoom in some. R to rotate, and you can see that rotating this custom bone dilates those pupils, which comes in really handy in facial animation. So some housekeeping here. Earlier I said if you grab this empty, that the bone will move along with it. The way to do that, select the bone, and you can't simply parent it to this arrow empty that we made earlier in the way the arrow empty is parented to the big empty, because this is now part of the armature and this is not. So what you have to do, since it's part of the armature, is you come over here and add a bone constraint, which is this little bone over this chain link here. And you want it to copy location. It wants to know what you want to copy. So hit the eyedropper here, and I don't know if we'll be able to select this little dilate W that I made earlier. And you'll see now that it's constrained to that. So what you would do is for anything you wanted to control, any of those shape keys that aren't linked up, which is most of them, you just go through the whole process again, and it's actually simpler now because now you can start copying and pasting. For example, you could select this get out of pose mode with Control Tab and select this empty that we use to line the bones up to, and you could do Shift D to duplicate and then just press the down arrow, hit enter, and so now you're set up for your next custom bone that will come out of here, and you can start that one again by selecting this, Control Tab into pose mode. Now you can't Shift D to duplicate this. You have to go into edit mode. Oops. I don't know what that is. I don't know what I pressed there. Tab squiggly line apparently turns on all the layers. You learn a new hotkey every day in Blender. So, Tab, and now this bone is still highlighted. Now you can Shift D, bring it down to here, tab out, and because of the constraint, this is still going to be up here, but if you hit R to rotate, you'll see it's over. There's another one underneath it now. So the way to get it down here is to just go into the bone constraints and X out of this one, hit the eyedropper, and try to select this dilate W2. And let's say this was going to be smile. Well, you come over here and name it smile. And you start the whole process. Again, you can't Shift duplicate this this custom bone template mesh because it is now mesh. And if you wanted to say something else, you have to start all over again with text. And if you want to keep things really clean and lined up, you start by selecting this, Shift S, cursor to selected, get the cursor right here, Shift A, add text. It comes in right there. Scale it way down, probably have to do it twice, till it's about the size that you want. RX90 to rotate it 90 degrees, tab into edit, smile, whoops, smile, tab out, Alt-C, again, turn it into mesh, and we want to select the bone, go over here to bones, name it, smile, hit enter, so it takes, come down here, get the eyedropper tool. Actually, before I do that, let me escape out of this eyedropper. Here's something that will help make your life easier. While this bone is still selected, unlock all these rotation transform locks and zoom in on it and rotate it so that it's straight, and then hit the 7 key to get the overhead view. Rotate it now so it's straight straight in this direction pretty much. And the 3 key, 1 key. So now that it's somewhat aligned with the world axes, now take the eyedropper tool, hit smile over here, and you'll see it's not so messed up when it comes in. So now you can right click on smile, and what I do is I know it's hard to see this bone over here, but try to remember what position it's in, and maybe if I zoom in that'll help. So what I try to do is line, while this is in object mode, I try to line it up. I scale it down to it's about the same size as the other one. I rotate it so it's kind of the right position. Then I think what, RZ 180? Yeah, to flip it over the Z axis. And that's pretty darn close. So now when you go into tab into edit mode, hit A to select all these vertices. Now these are lined up, and now when you re-rotate this, I think we want to go around the RZ 180, go around the Z axis. Then you can rotate and bring this kind of this way. Well, we know we want it to be standing up a little like this. Then you can G to grab and kind of put it over here near this empty that we made. Then you can tab out, hit H to hide the smile bone template, because its job is done. It might be needed again, so I don't delete it in case we want to use it to line something else up. And now you have this here. And I forget whether we, yeah. So we've already set it up to rotate. So the only thing left to do is the smiles on the main mesh here. So you would have to go back into the shape keys, and you'd have to make a smile. And this isn't a shape key driver tutorial, but just real quick so you can see how it would be done is we've only set up one of these so far. So let's just say we were starting from scratch and this driver wasn't even there yet. You would take this mouth left, turn it up to 1. Mouth smile right, turn it up to 1. And then you hit this down arrow here and select new shape from mix. Then you name it smile. Come over here. You have to, when you right click, you have to be over these numbers here. And then you can say add driver, manually create. Then it comes to the bottom of the list. Click on it and you start the process all over again, except what you can do is you find one of these other ones that you've already worked on, which was the smile that smile left that I deleted, but pretend we hadn't deleted that. Then you would click on it and select copy driver, and then I don't know why that's oh right, you would delete this. Then you would paste one here that you've already made. And come back down here, and these would already be filled out. It would say averaged value. This would be set to transform channel. All the parameters we already set up would be entered in here. The only thing that would be different would be this bone. So whatever we named this, if we named it, yes, we named it smile, so you would start to type it, and would come up here. And assuming we had set up the driver right, then this would start to control the smile. So you just go through one at a time, whatever you want to do, and then you end up with something like this, and it just makes animating so much easier. It's a lot of time to set it up, but it's worth it. So this squint is kind of hard to see. It's a very subtle effect. But you could start it and then, pick left or right and just offset a little bit to make it more natural. Same with the smile. I didn't bother putting a left and a right over here because if you remember, these two were working, or they were set up anyway, and then we got them working, and so that's a very symmetrical smile. So you would hit G to grab and kind of just throw it off a little. You could have a one-sided G to grab, one-sided smile, and this is the same reason I did it with the lips. Can rotate that, then add a little extra with this one. The nose, the sneer on the nose. And I didn't add a left and right there because what I did, these weren't working, but what I did is when I hooked them back up, I made it so that they did work, and so you can throw that out. And I even, I gave this one a dual purpose. If you grab it and then pull it this way, it does the nostril flare, which would look a little bit more like a nostril flare if her face weren't all contorted right now. But so the cheeks, I did puffing. That was already set up, but these drivers weren't working, as you saw in the beginning. And so you can have a lot of fun with it. This gaze was working when it came in, so her eyes can move around. And with that is really nice to do some pupils. If she's happy to see you, pupils will widen. And if you say something that upsets her, then the pupils will narrow and she'd be very angry with you. This could use some more work. We could set dilate up so that they widen when it's rotated down and narrow when it's rotated up. And you could even put left and right channels in there to kind of throw those off for, if she gets hit on the head or happens to be smoking crack. So, there you have it. That's how to add drivers to the existing Sintel for cycles model, available on blendswap.com, and I'll leave you with a little bit of that animation again as we head on out of here, and hopefully you found this useful and learned some tips and if you'd like to see more, this is my first video tutorial. I'm just testing the waters to see if there's an interest. I like Blender. I'd like to do more Blender tutorials. If you'd like to see more Blender tutorials, let me know by subscribing, liking, putting it in the comments, letting me know what you want to see. If there's anything unclear in this one, which I'm sure a lot probably is, since it's my first time, and I've already started the editing process, and I know there's a lot of jump cuts. I'm just trying to get it shorter, keep it under an hour, but, you know, sometimes there's settings that may have changed between jump cuts. So if that happened, then just ask a question in the comments and I'll answer it. So thanks a lot, and hopefully see you next time if you guys want more. Ciao.
Oh, hey. You got my note?